Imagine a world in chaos, a world without hope, a world where all kinds of evil was going on, where things weren't going as you'd hoped it would. You look around and you find a disaster everywhere you turn. The promises you had as a person, they're not there. And you remember back maybe some good old days when things were the way they ought to be, but they're not anymore. But there's a hope. There's a dream, perhaps, of a better day, a day down the road when something amazing would happen, beyond belief, that would break into the world and set things right again. Sounds a lot like my world. It also sounds a lot like the world of Jesus' day. A world in which a group of people had promises, a way of living, a way in which the world ought to be, a way in which people ought to live, rules and behaviors and activities and understandings of reality and culture that everybody should have known, but nobody was living like that. And the world seemed to go out of hand. And the promises that they once had, they seemed like all but a distant memory, if even they would happen. And then all of a sudden, in a moment, perhaps things might change. Promises they long remembered and read as children, or their mom or dad would have read to them before they went to bed, and words they would have spoken the first moment they woke up. Could they possibly be true? Could there possibly be a better day in which someone might come and set things right, judge the world, put things back in order, just as it ought to be, just as God had intended it? That's Advent. That was the day of Israel, when Jesus broke in. And that's our day today. In our world today, more and more churches around the globe are starting to put up things like Advent wreaths, and celebrating Advent itself, and lighting candles of all kinds of different colors, whether they be 4 purple and 1 pink, or 4 blue and 1 white candle in the middle, the Christ candle. And week by week we light these candles, anticipating the day we can light the middle one, that white candle, the one right there in the center that says Christ, He's here. That's Advent. The term itself means a breaking in, a busting through. Even Webster himself would suggest in his own dictionary that it's a day when a very important person would break into the scene. And that's Advent. That's the day we're looking for, a day when a very important person would break onto the scene. Not just a very important person, but the very important person, Jesus himself. And that's Advent. Today we live in a world where we look at Advent season as the church, and we begin to feel ourselves stretched in 2 different directions. On one side of it, we have this remembering of the day when Jesus first came. We think about the ancient tales of Mary and Joseph and some sort of a humble stable-like setting, and surrounded by things you wouldn't expect a king to be surrounded by. And we anticipate, we remember the day He came. But in another sense, we're stretched in a very opposite direction. This direction is the direction of another coming, Jesus' return. And Advent pulls us both ways. We remember back then, and we remember yet in the future. And in some way, we're set in the middle. We look at our world today and we say, boy, oh boy, things aren't the way we had expected them to be. If God is in control, if God's really reigning, if He's the king of this world, if He's the one in control, then why is there so much trouble? Why is there so much hunger? Why is there so much poverty? Why does it seem like sin seems to run rampant? Why do we create new ways to sin and define it as not that at all, or define new ways of living, justify our ways of being, and try to make the right ways seem wrong and the wrong ways seem right? If Christ is in control, how did that happen? It almost seems sometimes we might lose hope, but then we remember around this time of year that Christ is King, and one day He's coming back. He's going to set things right again. And in the meantime, here we are, looking back, remembering the wonderful promise, remembering that wonderful scene, and looking forward and anticipating, in fact, maybe even living as though what we know to be true eternally is true presently. living as though the kingdom is here, living as though Christ is king, living as though he is the one in control, and his rules, well, they do matter. In his way of being, it is our way of being. Living as though that is a fact, not a hope, not a dream, but a reality. That's Advent. That's what we're expecting. That's the hope we have. That's why we light candles. That's why we look and anticipate for a moment in time in which we can light that white candle on a Christmas Eve or maybe even a Christmas Day service and celebrate that he is here, that things are as they ought to be.